Welcome again to John's Media World. I'm John Peterson. This is an extra. We have a lot of stuff today. We're going to be talking about Sean Duffy and the reason why Spirit Airlines really closed down, according to him. And we'll also be getting to Tammy Baldwin, who talked to Ed Secretary Linda McMahon, didn't get the right kind of answers. In fact, no answer at all. And of course, Francesca Hong, she's running for governor in Wisconsin. And boy, she's the right candidate. We've got new blood coming into the system. I love it. Let's go to our first story. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy told reporters the war was not the impetus for Spirit Airlines going out of business. All right. But the Associated Press reported although Spirit had gone bankrupt twice before, the company said high oil prices, which had been rising because of the war in Iran, made it impossible to stay aloft. Oh, that's a different story, isn't it? And yet, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, after a year and a half in office, continues to blame the Biden administration. Nixing a JetBlue and Spirit Airlines merger. They're blaming Biden for not knowing ahead of time that later on Spirit would run into difficulties because of high fuel costs. All right, let's get to our first cut here.
And Secretary, let me get your take on what took place in terms of Spirit Airlines, because I know that the Democrats did not want Spirit to merge with JetBlue a year ago, and now we see that Spirit Airlines closed operations. The Treasury was supposed to be doing a deal to save this company.
Yeah,
Can you
what
tell us what happened?
Sure, Maria.
Nothing.
So this is just more of the mess we inherited from the Biden administration.
My God.
In 2020, September 2022, Elizabeth Warren, who loves to write letters, sent a letter to the Justice Department, to the Transport Department, saying that they should oppose the merger with Spirit Airlines. JetBlue wanted to buy them for $3.8 billion. It would have given them much more resiliency.
Much more resiliency, but maybe not enough now that the jet fuel prices are so high. 2022, I hope you caught that year. That's a long damn time to be able to kind of predict that maybe there'll be high fuel costs later on, maybe 4 or 5 years from now. This is ridiculous. All right, let's continue with this.
She and the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was probably the worst transportation secretary in history when he came to the office. Also, they were against the merger, and if JetBlue had merged with Spirit, we would have all these jobs that were lost yesterday. We had 30 regional airports who.
You can't predict that, by the way, and the government was in negotiations with Spirit to purchase them or become a major owner of Spirit.
Service. And I can tell you what happened here. It wasn't Treasury, it was Commerce that was trying to put something together. But the reason we were here was because the merger, the Biden administration opposed the merger. We shouldn't have been here in the first place.
Stand on your own damn 2 feet for once. Stop blaming everything on the Biden administration. Oh my God, this is getting tiresome, isn't it? It's really tiresome. Now, the war in Iran, of course, made jet fuel prices skyrocket. And I doubt megas will suddenly take responsibility for this major job killer because, Spirit had a lot of people employed there. Now they're out of work. And because of the war, now you wouldn't have thought that what happens if prices go through the roof for gasoline and jet fuel? What kind of impact will that have on the nation? A lot of that thought goes into going to war with another country before you take that first step. But they didn't take that first step. They didn't think ahead at all. And this is what happened. Tammy Baldwin's been out there fighting like crazy for Wisconsin. She's a senator here in Wisconsin, and she just barely won her last election with a millionaire who had nothing at all to offer. In fact, the guy lived in California and owns a bank out there and then puts a lot of small businesses out of business because he buys up their loans from other banks and then calls in those loans, which is not a good thing to do and not very friendly to small businesses that need those loans. And all of a sudden they have to come up with $500,000 or $1 million loan. That's ridiculous. Anyway, he puts people out of business, and he barely lost to Tammy Baldwin, who's been out there fighting for Wisconsin on the front lines for years. All right, anyway. Baldwin asked Linda McMahon, the education secretary, a very simple, easy question. And this is a claim by Linda McMahon, by the way, that she is downsizing the Department of Ed to put education back into the states. So that's what Tammy Baldwin asked. Give me an example of how you put education back into Wisconsin.
I had a chance to question Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. You know, she says what she's trying to do is return public education to the states and localities like school districts. So I asked her, what have you returned to the state of Wisconsin? What specifically have you returned to Wisconsin through your efforts to dismantle the Department of Education?
I've been touring states all around the country. I've been now to, I think, about 34 states.
I have looked at micro schools, middle schools, high schools, private schools, public schools, religious schools. I visited institutions of higher education. And so what we are trying to do is to really evaluate what the need is for our education across the country and to provide.
My legacy, hopefully, is going to be toolkits for different
returned anything to the states. You'll notice she rambled quite a bit, but you'll also notice that she didn't have a real answer to my question. States have always had the power to hire teachers and set curriculum and request waivers from the federal government. This is all just a part of a ploy for them to abolish the Department of Education, and I'm not having any of it.
That's Tammy Baldwin fighting for Wisconsin, fighting for education in each and every state, not just Wisconsin. And the Ed Secretary, Linda McMahon, had nothing to offer at all. All they can do is filibuster, asking a very simple, logical question, and they can't answer it because they're just taking a wrecking ball to the government. That's the only thing that matters to them. And they're putting much of the departments within the Department of Education in other departments. So it's going to be really hard to figure out where that loan is being offered. What department do you go to in the federal government to apply for that loan? It's very difficult. That was one of the other questions that she asked. All right, let's move on to another person here in Wisconsin. I'm bringing this up because we need progressives. We need the right kind of people to offer that fresh blood into the system. And this person is definitely doing that. She's a candidate for governor, and it's Francesca Hong. She's real, and the voters love her for it. In fact, my Gen Z son, my older one, is 27, and he was on board with her right away, wanted to put a sign up in the yard. And her agenda is fantastic. And just by coincidence, my former radio job, I interviewed her. The only governor candidate I got to interview, and it was her. And she's fantastic, a really terrific person, had a great business on her own. She gave that up to be in the legislature. But let's get to this, okay? This is Francesca Hong, and this is her first part of the agenda that she has, and she's going after those data centers.
Hey, folks. So AI data centers are so unpopular that even Tom Tiffany is jumping on the bandwagon. Earlier this month, he came out against taxpayer subsidies, and yesterday I clocked it that he's chasing the polls. Dude accused me of lying, tried to position himself as a leader on this issue, and then pointed to a Wisconsin Examiner article. So I went back and read the article. Tiffany said that data centers present new opportunities for economic development, and his only objection to subsidies is that they shouldn't be used on productive farmland. So that's basically a carve-out. I was also quoted in that same article having already called for a moratorium, an end to tax exemptions with a little thing called Control-Alt-Delete, And I'd already introduced data center moratorium legislation. So we got to ask ourselves, when Republican Tom Tiffany says he wants to protect our land and water, what does his record actually show? Because you can't claim that you're concerned or even care about our environment, our farms, public health, our public lands when you're voting to sell out the boundary waters to a foreign mining conglomerate.
He did that,
to
yes.
give tribal lands to oil pipeline polluters,
yes,
and have a 0% rating from environmental groups.
That's bad.
So
That's
when
bad.
Tom Tiffany says he's going to stand up to AI data center developers,
crazy.
I know that Wisconsin voters are too smart to fall for those lies. Be sure to check out Control-Alt-Delete, our plan on AI data centers, as well as the complete comprehensive platform about how we're going to make sure that we have permanent affordability for Wisconsin, and we build a Wisconsin that actually works for the working class people, cares about people, and is better for everyone. And remember, I know that we are the ones that make better possible.
That's right. It's Francesca Hong. She is running for governor of Wisconsin, and she leads the pack, by the way, according to a month-old Marquette survey that was taken. We're waiting for somebody to tackle the big problems, the festering problems here in Wisconsin, which I'm sure are happening all over the country and other states as well. Desperate to see some action at the state legislative level, and we'll see what happens with that. I do want to say, at least, that this person is fresh blood. No doubt about it, and it's someone that we need desperately in the Democratic Party. All right. The other big story is that the administration has decided to go after the cattle ranchers. Not the cattle ranchers so much as the concentration of meat suppliers in this country. There are 4 of them. 2 are foreign, 2 are domestic, but there's no competition. But the one thing you will not hear from these individuals is a solution to the problem. It's always punish, 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 fine, 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 jail, jail, jail. Seriously, have a solution. If you're going to go after these people, you must have a reason to do it because you want to change it into something better. You want to do something better. No solutions are being offered because they're very difficult to have solutions in an agreement with a lot of cattle ranchers out there. And we're talking about meat at this point, okay? Now, let's go to Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins. She came out, she called climate change a hoax, while farmers, of course, are really having to deal with it when they decide what crops to put in. But then she brought out the "I wish I had a crystal ball" excuse, which they always use when they're losing the argument, even before it begins. So I want to play this cut. This is Brooke Rollins, and she's trying to explain her way out of a paper bag. Let's see what happens.
Store and for ranchers to also experience relief from this.
So, as we've outlined, Marcia, you've heard 100 times, maybe not all the reporters in the room, being at a 75-year herd low, being at this point in the market, taken in total with, as I mentioned, the last administration moving cattle, doing everything they could to basically eviscerate the cattle industry, whether that was through grazing allotments or climate change, hoax, craziness, whatever it was. On top of that, you have the droughts, even in Nebraska.
The droughts, let's not skim over that. She just said climate change is a hoax, but we've got those damn droughts to deal with. Wonder why.
The fire they just had was in rural Nebraska, so it didn't.
Fires, climate change. Let's continue.
As much press as a lot of these wildfires do, but it was the biggest fire in Nebraska history, the 9th largest in American history.
Yes.
And we're not really talking about it because it was in rural America, but what that does.
Because it's part of climate change, and that's why you're not talking about it until just now.
Does to those ranchers. So all of that taken in total, combined with obviously the screwworm south of the border. We've had to keep the ports closed to make sure that stays out, which, thank the Lord we've been able to against all models showing it would be here last year. But you marry that to this effort and the long-term infrastructure that we are building in order to mitigate this sort of thing from ever happening again. Marcia, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you, we do believe that prices are going to start coming down this summer.
Again, you know, it's like we think it's going to come down. They're always promising that prices are going to come down, and I just think that it's so vacuous. They're not coming down. I just went to the grocery store yesterday, and I'm going to say this. I normally wouldn't say this, but I really did. This time, walking through the aisles, I really did notice dramatic price changes for almost all the products that I'm familiar with buying. All right. So I think there's a real problem there. In fact, there are smash burgers that are on sale, like 8 in a package. And at Aldi, they were like $14 for 8 of them, although they have been selling for about $10 or $11 now because of the beef shortage. I don't know if they've gone up to $14 at the other store that I shop at, but I am definitely going to be checking. All right, now let's get to a cattleman. That's the best person to talk to about all of this, right? He's pointing out the problem, but, you know, I think he is part of the problem. And now it's affecting him. So now he's complaining and he's on board with what's going on with the administration's investigation into this concentration of meat suppliers. So let's listen to what he had to say.
My name is Shad Sullivan, and I am an American cattle rancher. My family and I derive 100% of our income from the beef and cattle industry. First of all, I'd like to thank Jesus Christ for his favor on this nation for 250 years. America 250. Let's go.
All right, the favor on this nation creating a cattle shortage. I love it.
I'd also like to thank President Trump and his administration, including the Department of Justice, USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins, for fighting on behalf of the American people and returning to the founding principles to defend liberty and freedom. For too long, farmers, ranchers, and American consumers have suffered at the hands of consolidated power. Just in the last generation, we have lost 665,000 beef cattle in operations, which is 50% down from 1980. We have also lost 86,000 farmer feeders, which is 1,000 head and below. This has been driven by years of mergers and acquisitions of multinational corporations and foreign meat conglomerates. That has created a level of economic and political power that too often escapes oversight and accountability. As a result, I will reiterate that food security is national security, and I submit to you today, where there is beef, there is freedom.
Boy, I want that on a t-shirt. Where there's beef, there's freedom. By the way, we read a story recently on this show that Cargill has closed down a meat processing plant in Milwaukee. That was like last week. So it's even getting smaller, the whole market. The concentration is getting worse at this point. And I don't mind them investigating them, but I want to hear solutions. I don't want to hear them going after people to punish them and fine them. I want solutions to the problem. I don't know what they're going to do. A big problem in that industry is trying to get everybody to agree to something, some kind of control, some kind of government involvement in this. That's how that would work. But they have resisted it, and that's why they're ranchers. That's why they vote Republican. All right, now let's get to one more. This is Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. He's going after chicken, pork, and turkey producers. Now, this is an easy one, okay? And I'm just going to tip my hand right here. I think this is crazy. It's not that bad. The prices are pretty damn good for these products. So let's see what he intends to do about these pork, turkey, and chicken producers.
More broadly, the department has also executed on the president's executive order to stop anti-competitive behavior in the broader food supply market. Later this week, we will be announcing an historic settlement that will directly affect the prices of proteins like chicken, pork, and turkey. This business model allows competitors to exchange competitively sensitive information on every aspect of the protein industry and has raised the prices on chicken, raised the prices on pork, and raised the prices on turkey.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's tough investigation. It's not a bad product. They're not really overcharging. It's not like beef. Those prices go down most of the time anyway. They're very inexpensive. In fact, I discovered, where you buy a pound of frozen beef, ground beef. Well, I found out they're mixing ground beef with pork now. And it is delicious and it is less expensive. Little tip for you. All right. So anyway, that's what's going on in the beef industry. And now, of course, the chicken, pork, and turkey industries, they're going after them. They've got an agreement. There's going to be a fine. You just wait and see. All right. Let's talk about Christian nationalism. We covered that topic extensively on this program. And let's go to Pastor Joel Webbon. We've heard from him before. He's saying goodbye to Republicans, democracy, and voting. For sure this time, by the way. So, wow, he's pretty confident. I haven't really heard of this guy before until recently, so I don't know how important he is or what kind of sway he has within the Republican Party or the conservative movement or the Christian nationalist movement, for that matter. But enjoy your rights while you have them, because Joel Webbon says the American First Christian Nationalist Movement is going to take over the GOP in 2032. Let's listen.
What's going to happen is one of the two parties is going to have to be taken over. And I think that there's already good work well on the way to taking over the GOP. The GOP it's got massive problems, especially with that fourth pillar, Israel. The GOP is just blindly Zionist. We all know this. But the GOP stands, I think, the better chance to be taken over than the Democrat Party. It's not if. I think it's simply when. I don't know if we get a candidate like that in 2028. I think that probably the GOP gets crushed in the midterms in 2026, and the GOP deserves it.
Yes, they do.
They get crushed good and hard, because that's what they've earned.
Not going to help you.
But in 2028, maybe things improve. We probably won't get a presidential candidate that fits the bill that I've just described. And then the GOP will probably get crushed again, and it'll be what they deserve. But in the near future.
This guy is a sunshiny face, isn't he? Wow. Getting crushed. Okay, now let's see if there's any hope in the future.
As soon as 2028, but likely 2032.
There we go.
This America First Christian nationalist movement is going to take over the GOP, and it's going to win an election. It's going to be everything that MAGA said it would be and more, but MAGA betrayed us. And this is what we can look towards on the horizon of the political landscape. And this is what you need to be committed to and working towards.
All right, take it over the GOP. Wouldn't you just love to own the GOP? I don't think so. All right. Now, Joel Webbon says that since people will never give up democracy and the right to vote, which is he's going out on a limb with that prediction. He says they might have to take that right away by force. So let's check it out.
I don't see any path aside from like the full removal of feminism. I just think so long as we have democracy coupled with universal suffrage, you will constantly be going against the grain. You're constantly going to have half of the population voting for temperance, tolerance.
Yes, you can't.
Suicidal empathy. And my point, I guess, is that I don't think you're going to get people to vote away democracy or vote away.
But it just happened.
It can. But my point is that I'm agreeing with you. I think that it has to be taken. I think that men, virtuous, ambitious, masculine men have to climb the ladder of power and forcefully take away from the people that which is their detriment.
There. And that detriment is women voting, by the way. And that detriment is that they can't sell their agenda, just like gerrymandering. If you can't sell people on your belief system, then just try to steal it away with gerrymandering and taking everybody's rights away and taking over the GOP. That's Joel Webbon, Christian nationalist, on here. All right, let's close out with a list I put together of excessive spending by the administration. And that spending is coming back to us, the taxpayers, because we're the ones spending the money. Not only are we providing them the money to spend like it's going out of style, but we're also paying more for gasoline prices, heating our homes, intentionally higher prices for health care because we lost part of our tax credit on that with the Affordable Care Act in the big bad bill, higher food prices, or the Arc de Trump. That's just waiting for us. I can't wait till that's built. How about the lavish planes that the administrators in this administration are flying now? Massive funding increases for ICE. How about the estimated $80 billion deal to construct nuclear reactors? Did you hear about that one? Partly funded by Japanese partners, aimed to secure energy for AI and cloud computing infrastructure for data centers. Well, we're sharing the cost of that. Trump wants to start Stargate, an $800 billion AI cloud computing infrastructure for data centers. That's right. Now the Pentagon wants, and this idea was floated out there. I don't know why the media hadn't picked up on the large amount of money. $1.5 trillion for the Pentagon. Get this. Part of it is going to the Golden Dome, more drones, troop raises, and Pete Hegseth is actually promoting a country built on the industrial complex, something Eisenhower warned us not to do. And the Pentagon hasn't passed an audit yet, with trillions of lost spending. I'm talking, I think maybe $4 or $5 trillion at this point. I remember 60 Minutes report on this, I think in the 90s, and it was just jaw-dropping. But we'll see. Maybe there will be an audit someday again that'll actually come up with all of the lost money. How about the Iran war? We said $25 billion, but, I'm thinking that was a lowball figure. And now Trump and Republicans in Congress want me to pay part of the $400 million for the ballroom instead of having those billionaires do it. I bet that's good news to them. Gee, they won't have to spend that money now. But they got the favors. And don't forget the $10 billion Trump wants from his lawsuit against the IRS so he can make money on us. Our money going to him. This is not a complete list, and that's the sad news. All right, that's it for today's show. I'm John Peterson. This is Media World Extra. We'll see you again.